the beginnings of the problems we face today can be traced back. I mean, really, you could trace them back as long as you want, but let's stick to 2011 because that's really when the dollar's inflows into Lebanon started to slow down noticeably.
Hmm.
Um, the economy started stagnating because of the war in Syria. Um, I mean, Syria is an important trading partner for us, an important transit area for us to export our goods beyond Syria.
Hmm.
Um, the neighborhood became more dangerous. There was political risk. People just started to lose trust in just this area of the Middle East. Um, at that point, you see that your dollar inflows are starting to fall. Um, you had in the couple years before that a lot of dollars flowing into Lebanon, more than
Right.
the years before that because of the global financial crisis. Lebanon was
Yes.
shielded from that.
Right.
So at that time, you could have started. You could have floated your exchange rate because you had a lot of dollars flowing in. You didn't need to fix the exchange rate anymore. You
Oh,
could have
so
used,
back then that should have been like a forecasted sort of idea that this is the right measure to take because of what we're witnessing next door. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, well,
Mm.
because of the dollars that had been flowing in the 2 or 3 years before that.
Right.
So
Okay. So
you could have
yeah,
already started. You could have already started before the Syrian war.
I see. Right.
Um, you could have used the money that had flown in productive investments. Infrastructure. I mean, you need that to have a productive economy. Um, we used it all. We really squandered it because we used it all in non-productive investments in real estate in this country, and it increased our appetite for consumption,
Right. Yeah.
especially import consumption, because we had a fixed exchange rate that made foreign goods much cheaper relative to what they should have been. So we ended up importing everything. We never developed an export industry. We never developed real industry because it was just cheaper to export. The Syrian war started. Those inflows slowed down. Um, we still never did the reforms we needed to do to build that productive economy that we need. We just decided that we're just going to try to kick the can a little bit more, try to keep those dollar inflows coming, which were, remember, they were unsustainable dollars, right? Sustainable dollars are dollars you get because you exported something or because you got an investment from abroad.
Hmm.
Our
Hmm.
dollars were unsustainable because they came from a large part of them from people coming and putting deposits here. That money's got to
Right.
be paid back.
Right.
We never
Right.
really we thought that it'll come and we'll never pay it back. We'll just use it, and
Right.
that's where we ended. So that those dollar inflows kept slowing down. In 2015, they slowed down a lot, and rather than saying, okay, now it's serious, we need to do these reforms right now, we decided to kick the can a little bit more by saying, well, what if we just offer these people higher interest rates? Maybe they'll keep sending them. So we did that. That bought us a few more years, but not much. Um, and those extra dollars that came, we used them in the same way. We used them to fund our import consumption and on investments that were not productive and not generating any returns. So what ended up happening is you ended up with a huge amount of dollar debt. And I'm not talking about government debt. I'm just talking about the debt of the country, which
Yeah.
is mainly people's deposits. It's got to
Hmm.
be paid back. It's debt that the country owes.
Yeah.
And all of that money was just spent on import consumption. It was not taken and invested in something productive so that in the future it could be repaid. It was taken, offered a very high interest rate, and then spent. And that interest rate couldn't, the central bank, which sucked in all those dollars, couldn't pay that interest. So it just kept printing more and more money to pay that interest. It's such an important point that now we are creating so much new money just to pay the interest on all of the interest that's accrued in the system. And that
Yeah.
is what's causing the exchange rate to increase, prices to go up. And we haven't even really, we're just at the tip of the iceberg now.
So I like this analogy of kicking the can down the road, and several people I've spoken to in recent weeks have used the same analogy. And I don't know if this is by design. All of you belong to this sort of nerds world, finance for Lebanon. It may be that, but I think it's also the proper analogy that, and in a sense, you're kicking the can, but each time you kick it, it's sort of the distance shrinks, and you can't really
Yeah.
kick it any longer. But I want to get into the years that I sense from what you're saying that it just required a bit of maybe not foresight, but professionalism, maybe. I mean, it's almost like rather than do the work that needs to be done, there's sort of a consensus that we don't need to do this right now. We can sort of just wait it out. Does that boil down to incompetence, or is that a bigger sort of politics problem in Lebanon, that all sort of basic needs, or let's say basic services, and forget, I mean, beyond the central bank, just sort of the day-to-day affairs of the Lebanese state, is it a big political problem that's not being addressed, or is it really just mediocrity, that we just don't have the right people in right positions? So I'm just curious your thoughts on what is the actual problem boiled down to?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, and I've been trying to figure it out over the last few months, being a lot more involved and kind of seeing different parties and how they're parties like individuals and institutions and political parties and how they're facing this crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody a lot smarter than me told me anything that happens in Lebanon that a politician does or a party does or someone of influence does can be explained in two ways. So always look for those two things when you're trying to analyze a position that somebody's taking or a policy that's being proposed.
Whether or not they're wearing a suit for the conversation, because neither one of us have done that, which I think is a good thing. Sorry, yeah, go ahead.
No, well, listen, I'm wearing shorts down here, so
Good.
I don't do suits anymore. But you always look for two things: how do I kick the can a little bit longer, and how do I make money off of this? That's
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
And then if you think of it that way, you can understand why they do everything they do.
I see.
There is a big part of it is incompetence. They just don't know. A lot of them. Some of them are smart and do know, but a lot of them really just don't know. And I'm talking at the highest. Actually, I'm talking about all levels. Let's talk about all levels, okay? Mm-hmm. Because the problem in Lebanon is not only concentrated at the highest levels, even though that's where you solve it because things flow down, but really it's at just every level of everything. I've never seen a country like this where from the and with all respect to the people who are in these institutions really trying hard from the inside, despite all the disillusionment they feel to do good, and there's a lot of them, and I know them. Mm-hmm. But you have incompetence at every level of government and companies and whatever. And you have, and a part of that is the lack of accountability we're talking about, because you're not accountable, so there's no reason for you to do any better.
Right.
But put that aside, okay? Any country can have incompetence. Problem is we have incompetence at the very highest levels of government. Mm-hmm. But you also have the fact, and this is very important, that any of the reforms they need to do that are true and real reforms that will actually get the country out of this will cost them personally. So they are incentivized to kick the can and keep the system going because they are the beneficiaries of that system. So how do you expect them to change it at the cost of themselves? We don't have any heroes in this country. There's no good guys in any place you look. If you look at the cabinet, the government, political parties, the banks, the central bank, there are no good guys in this game, and that is a big problem because we don't have any person who will put the interest of their country and people ahead of their own interest. So if we can just delay this another year or two, we got 20 billion left of reserves. That'll buy us 3 or 4 years. Let's just do that, and then Allah bifrija. We'll see. God will sort it out for us, and that's what we face.